think about those little flashes of memory from when you were small. A smell, maybe, or just a feeling. That urge we all get sometimes, wanting to know more about where we came from. Well, today, we're doing just that kind of journey.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is how personal it is. We're not looking at some, grand historical text. Our source today is actually a set of notes, pretty intimate notes, written back in August 2000 by a man named Stanley Atkinson, just for his family.
Exactly. It's a direct window, isn't it? An unfiltered look.
Totally unfiltered. He wrote it down for them, recalling his life.
And these aren't just quick notes either. They cover a fair bit of his life, his experiences, the places, the people. It's like looking over his shoulder into the past.
It really is. So our mission really is to dive into those details. Stanley's life, the time he lived in the early to mid 20th century. We're looking for those little surprising bits, things that tell us what life was really like day to day.
For an ordinary kid, an ordinary family back then, we'll figure out the exact location as we go from his clues.
Right. So where does he start us off?
His very first memory. He says it's sitting on his great-grandfather Robert Marshall's knee, back door of the house, Beanley Avenue. He mentions his gran, Laura Annie, too. Straight into the family warmth.
It is, yeah. And right away you get this picture of a house just full of life, animals everywhere. He says they always had some animals around the house.
What kind?
Oh, you name it. Chickens, mice, guinea pigs, rabbits, birds, dogs, cats, even goldfish. That's quite a list.
Yeah.
It's just a different relationship with animals, maybe. More integrated into daily home life.
Definitely. Okay, so let's step inside this house on Beanley Avenue. Sounds pretty different from today. Upstairs, 2 big bedrooms, a little box room, and a big walk-in cupboard.
Yeah, quite a bit of storage upstairs. Downstairs, there's a large front room, another big room that was dining and sitting room, and then what he calls this big scullery. That was the kitchen.
The scullery. Tell us about that.
Okay, so picture this. A boiler for hot water, so you had to work for it. A walk-in pantry. A Belfast sink, but only a cold water tap.
Just cold water. Wow.
Yep. And just one single gas ring for boiling kettles. Concrete floor. A workbench with cupboards. Sounds very practical, maybe not so cozy. And he just casually mentioned spiders and flies being everywhere.
Yikes. Different standards back then, I guess. And this bit really got me. His grandparents actually lived and slept in the front room.
Yeah, that says so much, doesn't it? About multi-generational living, how families use space. Maybe space constraints, maybe just how things were done.
And the lighting. Only gas lights in the house.
Right, and candles to get up the stairs or move around at night. Even for the outside toilet in the backyard. Basic amenities were just different.
But it wasn't all cold and basic. He mentions warmth. Says they always had plenty of heat from our fire. Why was that?
Because his dad worked at the local pit, Northwall Bottle Colliery. He was a boiler fireman. So his tough job literally kept the home fires burning.
Okay. And his granddad worked at the pit too before he retired.
He did. And we learned they'd moved to the area, which, with places like Scotswood and Benwell mentioned, is clearly Newcastle upon Tyne, all the way from Norfolk. King's Lynn, they talked about a lot. Probably moved for the work, like so many did back then.
And his grandfather had a really serious accident at the pit, didn't he?
Yeah, horrific. Lost a foot, and then had to have it amputated up to the knee because of gangrene. Stanley just says he was well built and tough as old nails. You feel the hardship, the danger of that work.
Definitely. And his grandmother.
She was about 5'2", plumpish, he says. Used Sloane's liniment for her rheumatism. He even remembers the smell of it in their room. These little sensory details are so powerful.
They really are. And again, the practical details, potties under the beds. No ensuite bathrooms back then.
Not quite. Now, talking about family, he speaks really fondly of Stella.
Right, they shared a bed and played together all the time.
Yeah. Making tents out of curtains, pretending it was a boat sometimes. Typical kids, They'd argue, have little fights, but always make up again. It's a lovely picture of childhood friendship.
It is. Though he does mention getting lots of colds and headaches. Maybe the living conditions or just how things were?
Could be. And their daily routine was different too. Bedtime was super early.
How early?
Like 6:30 to 8:30 in the evening and up at the crack of dawn. Life just seemed much more tied to daylight hours, didn't it?
Definitely. Now, what about the world outside the house? The seasons.
He remembers the seasons as being really predictable, almost classic. Spring meant snow melting, bluebells, daffodils popping up, leaves returning.
Then summer.
Hot. Tar melting on the roads, big thunderstorms. Watching the lightning seemed quite exciting to him.
And autumn and winter.
Autumn was foggy days, leaves falling. Winter often brought deep snow, proper icicles. He even recalls one really clear, starry winter night. Sounds almost idyllic through a child's eyes. But it wasn't all just watching the weather. Playtime sounds quite hands-on.
Like playing in the coal house, getting filthy.
Exactly. That and a swing they made on the backyard door frame. Drawing, painting, reading too. Simple things, really.
So let's widen the lens a bit. What about the street, Beanley Avenue, and the neighbors?
Right, he gives us a bit of a tour. Nearby Northumberland Road, he says, had middle-class people. He remembers jobs. An undertaker, a retired teacher called Hogg, a dentist he clearly wasn't keen on. Names families too, like the Blackburns.
It's interesting how he remembers people by their jobs, isn't it? Shows how tied identity was to occupation, maybe, and how close-knit things were.
I think so. He lists other local families, the Beeswicks, the Calendars, who he says were large and poor but friendly. The Danskins, the Grahams, they had one of the really nice houses, got electricity early on. So you see the different levels of, well, prosperity right there in the neighborhood.
And on their actual side of the street.
He goes house by house almost. Number one, the Bryans. Sadly, he mentions a gassing suicide there. And then an unnamed private old woman. Then their house, number two. The Andersons next door, he thought they were quite posh but very friendly. And his cousin Renee worked for them. Then the Pelfermans, Gatenbys, Healy's, Taylors. It's like a map of his childhood street.
And this cousin Renee, her story is quite something.
It is. She was the Andersons' housekeeper. Mrs. Anderson died, and eventually Renee married Mr. Anderson. But this caused a rift. His son Neil, who was an artist, apparently left home because of it. Little family dramas playing out.
Gives you a glimpse into the social dynamics, doesn't it? Now, what about Stanley's own schooling?
Well, he's very honest. He says he didn't like school much at all, except for two things.
Let me guess. Sport and art.
You got it.
Yeah.
He says he was always good at art right through school, but struggled with other subjects. His real passions were playing, reading, and exploring, especially walks down on a local place, Mr. Ferguson's farm.
And he didn't just walk on the farm, did he? He actually helped out.
Yeah, before school. Helping deliver milk from a horse and cart. They had the big churns and the measures to ladle it out. Imagine kids doing that today. Shows a different level of responsibility, maybe, and that connection to local agriculture.
Definitely. Okay, let's talk shops. Lemington before the war sounds like it had everything.
It really does. He lists them off. Watson the butcher, Gill the baker, actually, several bakers, Potter the shoe shop, Maydew the general store, Johnny Pieces, Hindmarsh the wet fish shop.
Wow, keep going.
Merrick's the hardware shop, Garland's sweet shop, Vital, a newsagent, post office, a bank, a greengrocer, Scotty's the station hotel pub, the co-op with all its different departments.
Co-op was huge back then, wasn't it? A real center.
Absolutely. Todd the newsagent, Foster the barber, another sweet shop near the school. It's amazing how many specialist shops there were in one area. A real local economy.
And for entertainment, cinemas were big, right?
Yeah. The Princess was there local. But they also went to the Regent in Scotswood. Now that sounds basic.
How basic?
He calls it a large corrugated tin hut. Long wooden forms to sit on. And get this, a soil floor.
A soil floor? Seriously?
Seriously, you can almost smell the damp earth and maybe spilled drinks. Usherettes sold treats, maybe Hoyer Roots could be a local ice cream thing. And women walked around selling ice cream and sweets too. Yeah. Very different vibe.
And you could get a Savoy dip for a penny at the pork shop nearby to eat inside. Amazing. Where else did they go?
The Rialto in Benwell, the Imperial in Newburn, the Lyric in Throckley. That one was considered quite posh. A super cinema, apparently. He went with family. Cinema was clearly a big part of their world.
And Scotswood had other shops, too.
Yep. A pork shop home of the penny Savoy dip. A cycle shop, a toy shop. Imagine the excitement there for a kid in a fish and chip shop. Even Newburn had Marchette's fish shop, though he reckons they gave smaller portions.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. What about big life events? He talks about his grandfather passing away.
Yes. Very movingly. He remembers finding him, realizing he wasn't breathing, his mom's reaction. And the whole community responds, everyone drawing their blinds down as a mark of respect. The coffin in the front room, the hearse. Death was much more visible, more communal then.
A very different approach. He also mentions the trams. Didn't sound like a luxury ride.
Not at all. Noisy, hard wooden seats, really jerky. He says they often made him feel sick. Practical transport, but not comfortable.
But Sundays could be fun, right? Trips to the quayside.
Oh, that sounds brilliant. Really lively. Stalls everywhere, street entertainers, jugglers, musicians, strong men doing tricks, acrobats, even people selling those little jumping beans.
Jumping beans. And they drink sarsaparilla.
Yeah, poured from a barrel.
Yeah.
A popular soft drink back then. He was fascinated by the toy stalls, naturally. And his dad would buy fruit, sometimes meat there.
He also mentions a specific shop, Frankie Frank's.
On Dean Street, yeah. Run by a Jewish couple, he says. Sold all sorts, toys, jewelry, bits and pieces. He remembers them as nice people and says they were missed when they left. A little snapshot of the community and maybe changing times.
And for quieter leisure, walks and picnics?
Definitely. Cherished memories of going with his mum, Stella, Renee, his gran, to a mound overlooking the River Tyne. Simple pleasures.
And he was clearly observant, noticing the wildlife.
Oh, yeah. Beetles, field mice, rabbits, birds' nests, frog spawn turning into tadpoles. He lists it all. Shows a kid really engaged with the natural world around him. Playing in fields, making daisy chains, doing the buttercup under the chin thing to see if he liked butter.
Classic. He mentions being small but agile, though prone to colds, and his best mate.
Eddie Mills. A friendship that lasted years, he says. He also mentions neighbors near Renee, the Taylors, and this intriguing old lady in Denwick Avenue who made quilts. Her son, Billy Hutchinson, was a musician. Just adds more texture to his world.
So what about the rhythm of the week? Daily life routines.
Well, Monday was always wash day. That meant clotheslines strung right across the streets. Imagine navigating that. Even the street traders. The rag and bone man, a greengrocer with a limp, he remembers, had to work around the washing.
Quite a picture.
Yeah.
And Sundays.
Total contrast. Everything shut. Really quiet, few trams, perfect for long walks, picnics. Or playing games outside cricket, rounders, swapping cigarette cards, playing marbles, skipping.
Sounds very active.
Yeah.
And resourceful, too. Making things.
Yeah, cycling, using swings, making camps or dens, collecting bits of colored glass from the local glassworks waste product, I guess to use in pea hooters they made. Making bows and arrows, too. Lots of climbing trees, flying paper planes, hide and seek, hopscotch races. Kids made their own fun.
When they needed actual things, like clothes, where did they go?
Usually a trip to Scotswood Road. He mentioned secondhand shops for Comics Essential, Todd Brothers for school clothes and shoes, Wolf Brothers in Pink Lane, Farnan's on Nunn Street, Marks and Spencer's in the market, and Woolworths, of course, for cheaper bits and bobs.
It's interesting, he says they never went on holidays, never even owned a suitcase.
Right, but then immediately says they couldn't have had a better childhood. Their holidays were day trips maybe to the coast, like Whitley Bay or Tynemouth, or to Wrighton Willows, which was a popular local beauty spot. Really challenges our modern ideas about what makes a good childhood, doesn't it?
It really does. He also remembers playing under a railway bridge near an old garage, just finding play spaces wherever they could.
Exactly. Now, Christmas. Always a big deal for kids.
What does he remember about that?
The build-up, seeing toys appear in shop windows, his mom getting things ready, and their Christmas tree wasn't exactly traditional.
What was it?
A butter barrel, decorated up to look like a tree base, maybe with branches put in. Sounds quite creative.
Definitely resourceful. And presents.
Small toys and sweets given out in the days leading up to it. Then on Christmas Day itself, stockings with more treats and little toys. A big dinner, usually beef or pork, with pudding and custard. And then playing games together. Ludo, snakes and ladders, dominoes, often with friends popping in. Their house sounds like it was always open.
A real sense of community warmth there. What about his dad's life outside the home, besides the pit?
He mentions his dad liked to flutter Saturday bets and always went for a pint on Sunday mornings. His mom wasn't too happy about it, apparently, and had ways of making sure he wasn't late for Sunday dinner. But Stanley makes a point of saying his dad never ever hit my ma'am. An important detail about their relationship.
It is. Okay, let's go back outside. He talks about the local landscape more, the Dilly line.
Yeah, a local railway track. They used to walk along it through fields. He remembers finding frog spawn in a marsh nearby, watching water hens and other birds, sliding on the frozen duck pond at the farm in winter. No skates, just sliding in their shoes.
Sounds cold, and sledging too.
Oh yeah, down a bank towards the glassworks. Said it sometimes gave him a tummy ache, must have been quite steep or bumpy. And climbing things, lampposts, stacks of railway sleepers at the end of the streets, just to get a better view of the trains going past. Constant exploration.
What about religion? Was that a big part of life?
He says they went to Sunday school sometimes, but honestly, they preferred playing out. But the Bible was read at home. His mom, Gran, and Renee would sing hymns and tell Bible stories.
So it was present in the background.
Yeah. And he shares something quite personal later, that he's always believed in God, and often thinks about the sheer miracle of existence. A thoughtful side coming through.
And a real appreciation for nature, for life itself.
Absolutely. He says he's grateful just to be alive and often thinks that other people have it much worse. A kind of grounded philosophy.
Towards the end, he mentions a couple of childhood scrapes. A bike accident.
Yep. His first two-wheeler came a cropper and broke his nose. Ouch.
Ouch is right. And then a much bigger event looms. The war. How does he remember that starting?
He remembers hearing the news, the declaration of war, and admits that as kids, their first reaction was that it sounded very exciting. The naivety of youth, I suppose.
Soon got real, though, presumably.
Oh, yes. Building an air raid shelter in the front garden. Hearing the sirens, having to get into the shelters, the ARP wardens patrolling, making sure lights were out, air raid precautions wardens they were, local volunteers doing a vital job.
And seeing the war in the skies.
Vividly. Searchlights cutting through the dark, hearing anti-aircraft guns, actually seeing enemy planes sometimes, the barrage balloons floating overhead, and hearing bombs fall.
Scary stuff. Did any land near them?
He says some fell in nearby fields, some didn't explode. He and his mates would go looking at the craters afterwards, collecting bits of shrapnel. Apparently one unexploded shell was even put on display somewhere locally.
Wow, kids collecting shrapnel. Another sign of the times.
Yeah, they collected and swapped all sorts of war-related things. And he just assumed with total certainty that our side would win. That childhood optimism again.
One last thing he mentions is tatty picking. What was that?
Potato picking, basically.
Yeah.
Helping out on the farm, especially in winter. Hard, cold work, long hours, not much pay. But it was a way for kids to earn a bit of money from the farmer. Left them exhausted, he says.
Right. So as we wrap up this amazing deep dive into Stanley's world, what really stands out?
Well, it's that contrast, isn't it? A life so different in terms of, technology, comfort, everyday stuff. Gaslight, coal fires, outside toilets. Yet so much feels familiar. The family bonds, friendships, the fun of just playing outside.
That sense of community really comes through strongly. And their resourcefulness, making do, finding joy in simple things, and seeing how big events like the war just became part of their daily reality.
Absolutely. And for me, one of those aha moments is probably the cinema with the soil floor.
Oh, yeah.
It just perfectly captures a world that's vanished. That versus our Dolby Atmos surround sound multiplexes today.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling. And yet, despite lacking things like holidays abroad, he insists it was a great childhood, full of freedom and simple fun.
So what can we take away from Stanley's memories today?
I think there's a lot about resilience, maybe. The strength of those community ties and that ability to appreciate simple pleasures, the everyday stuff. Perhaps it's a reminder for us about connection, about finding joy in the moment,
Definitely. It makes you think, doesn't it?
It really does. And maybe a final thought for you listening. Thinking about Stanley's notes, what little details from your own past, things you barely notice now, might actually say the most about the world you grew up in. And flipping that around, how do you think people in the future will look back at our lives today? What everyday things we take for granted will seem utterly bizarre or fascinating to them? Stanley's memories kind of invite us all to do our own little deep dive, don't they?